How to add or remove transform track from the level sequence with C++ in Unreal. The transform track is the last track we have to cover to have covered all the most important tracks that are used in the level sequence. So today we're going to cover that one, and in the next few videos we'll be able to add some keys inside all those tracks, so let's get to it. But before we start, today's video is going to reuse some code we wrote in the video 22 of the series, so I recommend to go see that one, but if you don't want to, here is the code. So as usual, here we are in a completely empty header file, and actually it's not that empty today. Yeah, we have a lot of stuff because we have 6 functions to write today, and we also need a few for declaration and a new include right here at the top. So we're gonna go through all of that together, don't worry. So first we have this new include right here at the top because we're going to need the movie scene blend type, which is an enum inside that header file, and if we want to use it, well, we have to include it. So I'm going to include it right here at the top, and then we have 3 forward declarations for the classes we are going to use today. So the U level sequence, the U movie scene 3D transform track, and also the U movie scene 3D transform section. So the level sequence in which the track is going to be, in which the section is going to be. So we're going to need all these 3 classes right here at the top, and then we can go take a look at the 6 function we're going to create today, because yes, we need 3 functions for adding and removing a track from the level sequence, and then we have 3 other functions to be able to add sections inside those tracks, because inside the transform track you can have as many sections as you want. So we're going to first create the track in the level sequence, and then we add the section inside the track, obviously. So let's take a look at the function. I'm going to scroll down a little bit, and we have the 3 first functions right here. So first we have the get transform track from actor in level sequence, and that function you just have to feed it the path of the level sequence and then the actor that has a transform track on it. Yes, because the transform track are not directly inside the level sequence, they are on top of an actor. We have to provide the actor that should contain the transform track. That just makes sense. So this function is going to look inside that level sequence to find that actor, and if it finds the actor, it's going to look inside the actor to find the movie scene transform track right here. And if it finds it, well, it's going to return it to you, because, well, that's what we want to do. That's how we're going to get the transform track from an actor that is inside the level sequence, but then we also want to be able to add the transform track to an actor that is inside the level sequence, and we're gonna do that right here. So add transform track to actor in level sequence, same thing, you just have to provide it the path of the level sequence and the actor that is inside it, and then we're simply going to add the track on top of that actor, and the function is also going to return you the track if you need it. And then we have the last function to control tracks that are inside the level sequence, and that's the remove transform track from actor in level sequence. That one is also super simple, just have to feed it the path of the level sequence and also the actor that should have a transform track, and if it has a transform track, well, we're just going to remove it. That's it. That's as simple as that. So these are the 3 functions we're going to use to add and remove transform track from an actor, but now that we have a transform track on top of an actor, we also need to be able to add sections inside that track, because the keyframes are not going to go on the track directly, they are going to go inside the section that is inside the track. To be able to add keyframes, we also need sections. So I'm going to scroll all the way down here to the last 3 functions, and then we're going to have the same kind of functions. So we have first the get transform section from actor in level sequence. That one is going to be pretty similar to the previous get. We're going to provide the path of the level sequence and the actor that should have the transform track on it already, and inside that track the function is going to look and try to find the section that we want, and since we can have as many sections as we want in the track, well, we have to provide a way to identify which section we want to find, and that's what the section index is doing right here. We are going to use the index of the section to determine which section we want to get from the level sequence, and that function then is going to look inside the track, try to find the section that matches the index that we provide, and as output is going to return you this section, obviously. But that's just if the section already exists inside the track. But in our case, we want to also be able to add a section to the track, so that's what we're gonna do inside that little function that we have right here, the add transform section to actor in level sequence. That one's going to be pretty similar as the previous add. We're going to provide the path of the level sequence and the actor on which we want to add the transform section. The function is going to look into that actor and try to find the transform track, and then add the transform section inside that transform track. But then we can provide even more information to that function, because we want to decide where we want to place the section inside the track, and also what type of section we want to create. And that's what we're going to do with the 3 extra variables that we have in this function. So we have first the start frame and end frame, which are just going to let us decide where we want to place the section inside the track. So more on the left, more on the right, you can decide using the frames. And then we also have the blend type. So the transform section can have different blend types. We have the absolute section, relative section, and finally the additive section. So we'll be able to decide which type of section you want to add using the blend type right here. And then that function is going to simply add the section for you, place it at the right location, give it the right blend type, and that's it. It's going to return it to you, so you can use it to add keyframes on it if you want. So good, Good, that's it for that one. And now we have the last function right here. It's a little bit simpler one. It's the remove transform section from actor in level sequence. That one you provide the path of the level sequence and the actor. The function is going to try to find the section that you're interested in. The section is going to be decided by the section index right here. So the function is going to look inside that actor to try to find the section that matches the index that you provide. And if it finds it, well, it's just going to remove it for you. And that's it. So we're done with the header file. Now it's time to jump in the CPP. And here, as usual, we're going to start with the includes. And the first include we're going to need is the code of the video 22 of the series to find the actor that is inside the level sequence. And then we also need 4 other includes. We have first the level sequence, then the movie scene, because we want to modify both of those. And then we have the movie scene 3D transform track, because we want to add the 3D transform track. And also the movie scene 3D transform section, which is inside the transform track, which is inside the movie scene, which is inside the level sequence, obviously. And all those 4 includes are inside 3 modules. So the movie scene tracks, the movie scene, and the level sequence. So now it's time to go see inside the build.cs file and make sure that all those modules are inside it already, or if they are not, we have to add them. So I'm gonna go see right here. We have the level sequence, the movie scene, and the movie scene tracks. So good, I have all the modules that I need, so it's going to compile. If you don't, well, add them. And then that's it for the includes. Now it's time to go back in the CPP, and we're gonna start with the first function right here, the get transform track from actor in level sequence. And to get the transform track from an actor that is inside the level sequence, we have to first know that, well, the actor is inside the level sequence. So I'm going to get the UID of my actor, because that's just how it works. If you want to use actors inside the level sequence, you have to go through the UID. You cannot just use the actor as is. You have to ask the level sequence to give you the UID of that actor. And that's what I'm doing right here in the function that we wrote in the video 22 of the series. So the get actor UID from level sequence, you just have to provide the actor and the level sequence path, and that's going to look inside the level sequence and find the UID of that actor, and that's going to give you the UID right here. If that UID is not valid, it means that the actor is not inside the level sequence, so we cannot really add the track onto it. So I'm just going to return right away. But if the UID is valid, it means that the actor is inside the level sequence and that we can add the transform track onto that actor. The first step to do that is to load the level sequence. So I'm going to do a static load object, providing it the path of my level sequence right here. That's going to give you the level sequence. And using that level sequence, you can simply ask the movie scene to find the track that you're looking for, which in this case is the U movie scene 3D transform track, because we want to retrieve the transform track from that actor that we receive as input. So we're looking for the transform track using the UID of the actor, obviously, and that's going to give you the transform track that is on top of that actor. If the transform track is valid, it means that, well, it was a success. We were able to find the transform track, but it's also possible that it's not valid. So that's why right here I'm just going to add a little check just to see if we were able to find the track or not, depending if the track is valid or not. And obviously I'm going to return the track at the end, independently of if it's valid or not, because we just want to return the track. It doesn't matter if it's valid or not. I'm just going to return it right here. Good. So that's how we're looking inside an actor to find a track that you're looking for. So using the UID, you just do a find track, and that's going to give you the track that you want. But that's just if the track already exists. Now, in our case, we want to also be able to add the track on top of the actor if it's not there. So I'm just going to scroll right here, and to add the transform track on top of an actor that is inside the level sequence, the first step I'm going to do is to check if the track is already there. So I'm just going to call the first function, the get transform track from actor in level sequence. Same thing, providing it the path of the level sequence and the actor, and that's going to give you the transform track. If the track is already valid right here, I'm just going to return right away, because the track is already there. I don't want to add a new track to it. We can already create as many sections as we want inside that track, so we don't have to create a bunch of tracks. We just have to create one track, and then we can create a bunch of sections. So that's what I'm going to do right here. If the track already exists, I'm not going to create a new one because it's already there, so I'm just going to return right away. But if the track doesn't exist, then I'm going to try to create it. So I'm going to retrieve the UID of my actor once again, because we want to add the track on top of the actor, so we need the UID of that actor to do that. And if the UID is not valid, well, I cannot add the track on top of an actor that doesn't exist, so I'm just going to return right away also. But if the UID is valid, then I can finally add my track onto it. So I'm just going to load my level sequence right here, same thing, using a static load object and the path of my level sequence. And once the level sequence is loaded, I can ask the movie scene to add the track. The class of the track is the U movie scene 3D transform track, and then we have to provide it the UID of the actor that should receive the track, which is the UID that I have right here. Obviously, as output is going to return you the transform track that I can then return right here at the end of the function in the case that you want to add something onto that track. So here it is. So I have my transform track, and that function is done. Now we know how to add a transform track to an actor that is inside the level sequence. Now it's time to look at how to remove a transform track from an actor that is inside the level sequence. And to do that, well, we have to first find the transform track. If the transform track is not there, we cannot remove it. So get transform track from actor in level sequence, providing it the path of the level sequence and the actor. That's going to give you the track. If the track is null, I can just return return right away because I don't have anything to remove because, well, the track is not there. So that's good, job done. But if the track exists, then I can remove it. I'm just going to load my level sequence once again, static load object, providing it the path of my level sequence. And once it's done, I can simply ask the movie scene to remove my track, which is the transform track that I found at the beginning of the function. So I find the track and then I ask the movie scene to remove the track for me because it's there, I want to remove it. That's good, everything's done. I can say that it was a success, I'm done, I remove the track from the level sequence, and that's it. These three functions were the functions that controls the track inside the level sequence, but now that we have a track properly created in the level sequence, it's time to add sections inside that track, and we're gonna do that using the next function, and we're gonna start with the get transform section from actor in level sequence. So I'm gonna scroll right here, and the first step to find the section inside the transform track is to, well, first find the transform track, and that's what I'm gonna do right here. Get transform track from actor in level sequence, the path of the level sequence, the actor, that's going to give you the transform track. If the track doesn't exist, I cannot find the section onto it, so I'm just going to return right away. If the track is valid, then we can look for the section that we want. So the section that we want is the section index that we receive right here, but in our case, if we are looking inside the transform track, we can see that there's a lot of sections. Potentially, you can have as many sections as you want. So I'm just going to get all the sections that are inside my transform track. That's going to give me an array of sections right here, and using that array, I'm going to try to determine if my index that I receive as input is valid or not. So does the user provided an index that makes sense? So first, if the index is smaller than 0, well, it's not valid. That's not how indexes work. They are all starting at 0. So if the index is smaller than 0, well, the index is invalid, and I'm going to return right away. And same thing, if the index is greater than the amount of sections that are inside the track, well, that index is also invalid. If I'm trying to find the section 10,955 and I only have 3 sections inside my track, well, I don't have a track that matches that index. So I'm just going to return right away also. But once I know that my index is valid, I can simply fetch inside my sections that are inside my track and return the section matching the index that I receive as input right here. I also have to cast it right there because my array of section is actually an array of uMovieScene section, not an array of uMovieScene 3D transform section, and that's the type of section we want to return at the end. So since it's not the right type, we have to cast it, and the reason why the cast is always going to work is because we are inside the transform track, and the transform track only has a bunch of transform section. That just makes sense. Here we're just going from the parent class to the 3D transform section class, and that should always work. So I'm just going to return right here and say that I found my section and I'm happy about it. So good, now it's time to add a section if the section doesn't exist inside my track. And to add a section inside a track, well, we have to first access the track. So I'm going to get my track right here. If the track is not valid, I cannot add a section, so I'm going to return right away. But if my track is valid, then I can start creating my section. So I'm going to create my transform section right here using the transform track and asking it to create a new section. Since it's the transform track, it's always going to create a 3D transform section. That just makes sense. So it's going to create the section for you. And if the creation worked, well, that variable is going to be valid. It's possible that the creation fails, and in this case, I'm just going to return right away because, well, it failed for some random reason. So here you go, you know that it didn't work, but in most cases, it's going to work, and you're going to have a transform section right here. And now that you have that section, you can start configuring it because here we have the start frame, end frame, and blend type that we want to apply to that section, and that's what we're going to do. So first, let's start with the start and end frame, and to do that, we need the amount of ticks there are per frame inside the level sequence because the level sequence works in ticks, not in frames. So you have to convert your frame number that you have right here in actual ticks number for the level sequence to place the track at the right location. So here I'm calculating how many ticks there are per frame using that little piece of code right there. That's going to give you how many ticks there are per frame, and then you can simply multiply that number by the start frame and end frame to convert them to ticks numbers, and that's what I'm doing right here. So I'm setting the range of my section using my start frame multiplied by the amount of ticks there are per frame, and same thing for my end frame. So my end frame multiplied by their ticks per frame, and that's going to give me the start point and end point of my section anywhere I want inside my track. So I'm going to place it on the left, on the right, a little bit. You can move it anywhere you want. So you're going to place your section like that. And once the section is placed inside the level sequence, the second step we have to do is to set its blend type. And that one is super simple. You just have to ask the section to set its blend type using the blend type that you receive as input. That's it, it's done. But actually it's not fully done because now you're placing the section on the left, on the right, but you can have as many sections as you want in the level sequence. You can have 1, 2, 3, 10, 20, 10,000. Doesn't really matter. The important thing is that, Well, you can place them anywhere you want in the level sequence, and you can have some sections that are on top of each other, and usually when you do that, you place them inside a new row, so the first row, second row, third row, fourth row. You can place them on different rows to have multiple transforms overlapping each other, but in our case, there's nowhere in this code right here that sets the row where we want to place the section. We just have the start frame and end frame, but we don't have the row, and that's what we're gonna add right here. Since there's a few lines, I'm just going to scroll a little bit down, but here I'm going to calculate on which row I want to place my section, and since I'm going to be lazy, I'm just going to always create a new row for that section. And to do that, well, I'm just going to loop through all the sections that are currently inside the track. That's going to give me all my sections, and then I'm going to take the row index of those sections and increase my row index based on those row indexes. So my row index at the end of the for each loop is going to correspond to the last row that is inside my track, because I'm always setting it to the bigger row index that I find. So that's always going to be the last row. So if I have sections on row 0, 5, 10, that index is going to be 10 at the end of the for each loop. So since I want to create a new row for my section, every time I'm just going to increase it by 1. So if there was a section on row 10, I'm always going to place it to row 11, and then 12, 13, 14. So setting the row index of my section onto a new row, and that's it, we're done. Now the section is configured properly, but there's a little plot twist right here. The section is configured properly, it's created and configured, but it's not inside the track yet, because, well, we have to add it manually, and that's what we're gonna do right here. So asking the transform track to add the section is obviously the one we just configured, and that's going to place it to the right location because, well, it's already pre-configured. So we're creating the section right here, configuring the section, and then once it's configured properly, we can add it inside the level sequence right there. Here we go, it's done, and now we can see that it was a success. We were able to create the section and add it on top of the track, and that's it. Now it's time for the last function, the function that removes the section from the actor track inside the level sequence, and for that one it's actually super simple. We have to first get the section from the level sequence. So here I'm getting the transform section from an actor in the level sequence, feeding in the path and the actor, and also the section index, which is the section we want to remove. That's going to give you a section. If the section is already invalid, well, I don't have to remove it because it doesn't exist. But if the section exists, then I can simply get my track, my transform track from the level sequence, and then ask the track to remove the section, because that's just how it works. You cannot really just ask the section to destroy itself. You have to ask the track to remove the section from it, and that's going to remove the section. And actually that's it, we're done. Well, not actually. You also have to tell the track to refresh itself, calling the modify function right here. I don't know why when you remove something from the track, it doesn't realize that it was modified, then you have to tell it manually. Yeah, it's a little bit weird, but whatever. You just have to call this function right here to refresh the level sequence, otherwise you will not see the track disappearing in the level sequence. It will still stay there, and that's not nice. You want to remove the section, so yeah. Just call the modify on top of the track, and that's it. Now we're done for real. It's time to jump in Unreal and see if it actually works. Here I am in Unreal in a relatively empty level and a relatively empty level sequence that I have right here. I only have my warrior in there, and we're going to use that warrior to add the transform track on it, and then add transform section inside that transform track, and we're gonna do that using a little user interface that I have right here. So in here you can provide the path of the level sequence you want to modify, and then the start frame and end frame of your transform section. You're going to add inside your transform track the section index of the section you're trying to affect, and then the blend type of the section you're trying to add, and then a few buttons to add a track, get a track, remove a track, add a section, get a section, remove a section, and when clicking on those buttons, it's going to call the C++ function we just wrote. So the first three functions that we have right here are the functions related to the track, so the add transform track, get track, and remove track. In all those functions, you just have to provide the path of the level sequence and the actor you're trying to modify, so the warrior right here in my case. So I'm just going to provide those information. And for the last three functions, these are the ones related to the sections that are inside the track, so the add transform section to actor in level sequence. Same as the previous function, you have to provide the path of the level sequence and the actor, but you also have a few more variables right here. You have the start frame of the section, the end frame of the section, and finally the blend type of the section. Since the blend type is an integer in my user interface, I'm going to convert it to an enum right here, so it matches the blend type that the function is supposed to receive. So if I'm selecting the index 0, it's going to be absolute, 1 is going to be additive, relative, and then additive from base. That was for the function to add the transform section to an actor in the level sequence, but then we have the two other functions that gets and remove the section from the actor, and for both of those you just have to provide the path of the level sequence, the actor, and the index of the section you either want to get or remove, and that's it. Now let's go see if it works. I'm going to open my editor utility widget right here, scroll all the way at the bottom, and here we go. Now since my actor doesn't have a track, we can start by adding a track, obviously, so I'm going to add my transform track, and I have it right there. I can also remove the track if I want to. So get, add, remove, they all work. Then now that I have a track, I can decide to add a section inside that track. I'm going to add a section right here. Here we go. The section is between the frame 0 and frame 50 because that's what I wrote inside the user interface. I can move those numbers a little bit and then add another section, and you can see that it added a new section between 56 and 100 something because that's what I decided in the user interface. You can also see that the section is on a new row because that's what we decided in the code. We always create a section on top of a new row. That way, if you have overlapping section like that, for example, you can see that the section doesn't break any of the other sections because it's on another row, so they are just overlapping each other, and that's totally fine. Good. You can also decide the blend type. In my case, since I didn't change the blend type, they are all set to absolute, and you can know that because there's nothing written on them. But if I change my blend type to, let's say, 1 and then maybe 2 and then maybe 3, you can see that if I over those sections, that one is not written anything, this one is written additive because it's an additive, then relative, and then additive from base. It's a little bit small, but that's how you identify the blend type of your section. So additive, relative, absolute, and then additive from base. Here we go. And the last thing we have to test is the remove. So I'm going to, let's say, remove the index 3. So 1, 2, 3, actually 0, 1, 2, and then 3, it should be that one. So if I remove the section, it should remove that one. Here we go. It seemed to have done it. And then I can try to, let's say, remove the index 1, which will be this one right here. Remove. Here we go. It removed it. Then I can remove index 0 and then 0, 0, 0. I can remove all my sections, no problem, and I can add as many as I want. Good. So that's pretty much it. Now you know how to add and remove a transform track from a level sequence, and that's gonna be it for today's video. So I'm gonna see you in the next one. Bye bye.